In this video, I want to get into more depth about the domain of a logarithmic function. So before we start any of the problems over here, I want to start by graphing a basic logarithmic function. So when we have a basic logarithmic function, it has a vertical asymptote at x equals 0. Let's see. Okay, it has a vertical asymptote at x equals 0, and like that, and it kind of goes like this. Okay, and so the domain is from 0 to infinity, is the typical domain. Okay, and it doesn't matter what base the logarithm is. The base tells you how sort of shrunken down or how tall up the logarithmic function is, but it doesn't tell you what the domain, it doesn't tell you anything about the domain. All basic logarithmic functions have a domain from 0 to infinity. So anything that you want to put into a logarithm needs to be a positive, non-zero number. Okay, so let's use that knowledge and go here to these problems. So here, the input, so the base doesn't matter, but the input into the logarithmic function needs to be positive, right? Greater than 0. So you can write an inequality. X minus 3 needs to be greater than 0. So x needs to be greater than 3, which means that the domain is from 3 to infinity. Okay, let's try another example. So ln is natural log, but again, that's just changing the base. So changing the base doesn't affect the domain. So for the domain, anything put into the logarithm needs to be greater than 0. So where is x squared plus 4 greater than 0? Well, if you think about it, we're squaring the number, so it's already positive, right? Because when you square a number, it's always positive. Plus 4, this thing is always positive, right? So this is always greater than 0, which would make the domain from negative infinity to positive infinity, because x squared is always positive, plus 4 is always positive. The lowest x squared can be a 0, plus 4 is 4, so you can always do this. So negative infinity to positive infinity. Now for our last example, we need everything, now this is log base 10, but the base doesn't matter. We need everything inside the parentheses to be greater than 0. So we need 3x minus 2 to be greater than 0. Well, where is a square root of something greater than 0? It's greater than 0 when 3x minus 2 is greater than 0, right? As long as that's greater than 0, then the square root of it's going to be greater than 0. So now we can solve this. So sorry about that. So 3x needs to be greater than 2. So x needs to be greater than 2/3. So it's going to be from 2/3 to infinity. That's our domain. And we never include the endpoint because it's an asymptote. It doesn't hit that endpoint. And that is how we find the domain of a logarithmic function.